right, here we go with our square layered box. This is such a cute little box, and I just want you to keep in mind that a lot of the products that I may be using to demonstrate these different projects could be retired. Some of them are going to be out of our occasions catalog, which is only around for a short period of time, but don't let that distract you. You can take the ideas that I'm sharing with you in these projects, and if a paper or a color or anything is not available to you when you decide to make these, you can use any other paper you like. For example, on this box, I knew that I wanted to go with this gold foil paper. So I just chose colors that coordinated with it. So if you have a Specialty Designer Series paper or any kind of pattern paper that you really like, just find some coordinating colors to work with it and build your box off of that. So that being said, let's move on in and get this project going. So I'm going to take my instructions and I'm just going to go step by step so that when you create the box at home, you can go step by step along with me. All right, so the supplies. What I have here is a piece of So Saffron, and this is 9 inches by 7 3/8, and keep in mind that all of the measurements are going to be listed in your instructions. I have 5 pieces of basic gray 2.5 by 2.5, 5 pieces of my Specialty Designer Series paper 2.25 by 2.25, another piece of basic gray that is 1.25 by 1.25, and another piece of Whisper White that is 1.25 by 1.25. All right, so I'm going to move all of these out of the way, and we're going to begin by doing our scoring. On the 9-inch side, start out and score at 2 1/8 of an inch, then 4 1/4, 6 3/8, then 8 1/2. Then turn your paper a quarter turn and put it so the 7 3/8 is along the ruler at the top. Score at 1/2 of an inch, 2 5/8, 4 3/4, and 6 7/8. Now let me just show you that in your instructions, you're going to have a diagram for any of the projects like this that I feel you need to see where all the cutting and scoring lines and everything is, so you can follow this. The black lines are going to show you where the box has been scored and where you're going to need to fold. Any of the red lines that you see right here are lines that need to be cut on, and then when you see the blue lines, those are lines that indicate you need adhesive on those. So let's go ahead and follow that template and get this cut out. Let me show you one other thing. When you're doing one of these, you need to make sure that when you're looking at your template to cut out, that your paper is going in the right direction too. So on this, I've got my 1/2 inch score line at the top, as you see here, and there's not one at the bottom. There's just this 2 1/8 inch score line here. So I have my paper going in the same direction. There's my 1/2 inch score line and my 2 1/8 inch score line right there. So that will help you in knowing where to cut. So I'm going to turn my templates and my paper sideways, and what I'm going to do is cut out this little tab right here. So I'm going up to the second score line. I'm going to cut straight up there and there, and I know that this needs to be cut out at an angle. So I'm just going to snip the little wedges out right there and right there. Okay, so I know that all of this section right here is going to be removed and cut around. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut straight up this second score line, stopping at the second horizontal score line. Then I'm going to come over here to the second horizontal score line and come up there and cut that square out. Now also, this little tab right here needs to be removed, so I'm going to cut that off. And then I'm going to cut straight down, which I'm going to flip this over since I'm right-handed, it's easier for me. And I'm going to cut up to that next score line right there. So if you can see, we're kind of starting to look like what this section looks like here. But we want to make this just a little bit smaller. I'm going to start out by cutting a wedge here. and here. And then I'm just going to cut this down just a little bit, just like that. All right, so just keep following your instructions and cut out the rest of your box. So what I know I need to do now is just cut straight up this score line and this one. Then I need to cut a wedge out of here and out of here. And then I need to cut this one down just a little bit. It doesn't have to be precise, just cut it down just slightly. All right, so this side over here needs to look just like this side. So let me bring all of this back in, and I'm only showing you this in case you're not a seasoned crafter. If you have made boxes before, I know you know how to do all of this, but if you're a beginner crafter or you've never taken one of my classes before, I just want to make sure that you do understand my purpose in creating these for you and how to read them. So as you can see, we've got this section here and this little tab. We've got this section here, which is the bottom, and then we've got these sections here and the little tab. All of these areas which were here need to be cut out. And if it helps you, you can always take a pencil or a pen and make X's on these areas to know that those have to be cut away. All right, so let's go ahead and get all of the score lines folded and burnished. One other thing I want to make sure that I do so I don't forget is to cut a very small wedge out of that top tab right there. So now our box is all cut out and ready to go. I'm going to be using one of the scalloped squares. This is the 2-inch scallop. For the designer series paper, I'm going to be using the next size smaller scallop. For my basic gray, the smaller square, I'm going to be using the 1-inch scallop. And then for the Whisper White, I'm going to be using the very smallest scalloped square and my Whisper White. So I'm going to run all this through the Big Shot and then we'll move on to our next step. All of my squares are cut out with the exception of my Whisper White. I want to stamp that first. And the stamp set that I have decided to use is the Oh So Eclectic. This was around last year and it is staying in our catalog this year, so if this is a stamp set that you like, it will be available for you at least through 2018 and 2019. Alright, so I've got my basic gray ink here and I'm just going to stamp this pretty much in the center of my Whisper White. Alright, I'm going to put this in my Big Shot and get it cut out too. Okay, so now is when we're going to do all of the assembly. And you can either put your squares onto your box before or after you assemble the box, totally up to you. Sometimes it's easier if you put it on afterwards, that way you can make sure that you're not going to put one in a spot where it doesn't belong. So I'm just going to use some liquid glue. You can use whatever adhesive you prefer, and I'm just going to layer all of my designer series paper on top of my gray squares, and then I'll go ahead and take my sentiment, which that needs to be put on with a dimensional. So I'll pop a dimensional on the back of that and then pop that into the center of this little square. So I'm going to continue on layering up the rest of my squares. Okay, so I've got all of my squares on here. Now as far as making sure that all of my patterns are going in the same direction, when I close my box, these two are going to go the same direction as each other, and then these two will go the opposite direction, and since this is the top, it will also go in the same direction as these. So let's just go ahead and put this together, and then I will show you exactly what I'm talking about. And if all of that just doesn't make sense, just assemble your box first. So I've got this one going here, this one going here. I'm just lining up my cut edges with my folded edges. That one, and line up that corner. So here we go. See, now that I've got my box put together, since I am using a directional paper, as you can see as I'm turning the box, all of those patterns are going the same way, and on the top going up, up, up and down. Alright, so now we're going to put our ribbon in place. I'm going to be using some of the basic gray ribbon, which came from the Shimmer Combo Pack, which was in our Celebration catalog, and I got it free when I made a purchase. So I'm going to be using some of this today. So what I'm going to do here is just wrap this around. Let me make sure where my opening is. So that's the front of my box. Wrap this around from the front to the back and then over the top. And then I'm just going to tie this into a bow. Now all that's left to do is to get our missing U on the front. I'm going to use a dimensional to do that with. Just going to pop one right in the middle and then attach that to my ribbon right here. So there we go. There is our two little square layered boxes. Aren't they so cute?